Now, the red carpet has been rolled out in New Delhi to the heads of state from across Africa. They're in the Indian capital for the third India-Africa summit. The gathering is set to boost economic and political interaction as well as trade between the two sides. Earlier, I spoke with our correspondent in New Delhi, Mandakini Galot, and began by asking her if this was India's way of playing catch-up to China.
Renewed interest in Africa over the last decade and a half is the direct result of the country's ambitious desire to give China a run for its money, so to speak. Now, historically, India has always had some amount of trade ties with most African nations, but over the last 15 years, successive Indian governments have really upped the ante on trade policies. For instance, bilateral trade between India and Africa stood at just $1 billion in 1995. By 2008, that figure was up to $45 billion and is expected to be in the range of about $75 billion this year. Now, that's still a long way off from China's $200 billion trade with Africa. But for Prime Minister Modi, this is a really important event. He's really rolling out the red carpet, like you said. Now, a lot of Indian companies have done fairly well in a lot of African nations like South Africa and West Africa over the last few years. So Indian CEOs are certainly watching this summit very, very carefully to see if it results in some sort of solid economic policies or is just another diplomatic jamboree of the kind that Prime Minister Modi has become very famous for.
That's right, Mandakini. But what are some of the core areas in Africa and sectors in particular that India is keen on?
Well, to start off, there's energy. India has huge energy requirements, and Africa, with its untapped resources, is the right place to look. Now, for instance, a lot of India's oil imports already come from Africa. 1 out of every 5 barrels of oil that India imports come from Nigeria. India is also making a lot of investment into energy infrastructure in African nations. Another area where there's a lot of economic exchange is, interestingly enough, agriculture, which is one of India's largest sectors for employment, but one which has seen quite a bit of slowdown in recent years. On the other hand, a lot of African nations like Ethiopia are hoping to increase agricultural output. So there are a lot of policies on the table like skilled manpower exchange. A lot of Indian farmers are being offered land cheap as the continent tries to increase its output. There are also a lot of other policies in place. India has earmarked $7.5 billion for investment in 137 projects in 40 African nations. So we're likely to see a lot of exchange of skilled manpower in areas like energy and agriculture over the next few years.
Mandakini Galot reporting there from New Delhi on that India-Africa summit that's getting underway today. Thanks so much, Delano D'Souza, for that look through the day's top business news stories.